Hey YouTube, it's Steve from Tower Genius. It's been a while since I did a driving video, so I figured today's a good day. Got a few minutes here in the car. So basically, I just want to kind of talk about, like kind of like a roundup for where we are in 2025, July, as I record this video. So we've been seeing a whole bunch of crazy stuff this year, namely on new sell sites, right? So what's been driving the crazy proposals on new cell tower leases in 2025 has been the leases being proposed by Vertical Bridge and some of their other, type of shell company type of firms going out to an acquisition for Vertical Bridge and Verizon Wireless. And basically, you're seeing low rents and very long lease terms with crazy low, insanely stupid rental escalators. And I'm using the word stupid kindly. And you'll see like a 90-year lease. You'll have like a 5-year initial term with 17, I think that's the right math, 17 additional 5-year renewals, making it a 90-year deal. And they're offering, I've seen some where they're offering 5% every 5 years, and as far as rent escalations, right? I've seen 1.5%, and typically it's 1.5%, which is absolutely insane. The rate of inflation historically has been around 2.4% annually, the last 25 years or so. The standard in the wireless industry is, for the last 20 years or so, at least, has been 3% annually, and they're basically crying poverty, right? Vertical Bridge is saying, oh, well, we did this deal with Verizon Wireless, and that's we're just passing through what we signed. Well, they should have done a better job negotiating. So basically, if you're a property owner, they're forcing you to eat the crap sandwich that Verizon force-fed them on their escalator, if that's true, right? So, but Vertical Bridge has really been tough, and they've been really holding on to these 1.5% escalators. And to me, this is a scheme from them to, force property owners into doing the math a few years down the road and realizing that, if they do this deal for 50 years or 60 years, the money, the buying power is going to be, half of what it would be right now. So it's really, forcing a sale as far as I'm concerned. And that's their strategy. That's fine. But, if you're a property owner, really, if enough property owners would push back and just say, no, we're not doing this, we're not agreeing to that, then maybe Vertical Bridge would change what they're doing. But that hasn't been the case so far in 2025. So we've seen, crazy low escalators, and really rigid and almost harsh right of first refusal language in a lot of places. So you're looking at lower rents being offered, longer terms, crappier terms, and it's basically very cutthroat. So and again, I don't mean to harp on Vertical Bridge, but I am. On renewals that we've seen with Vertical Bridge, they have been flexible on the escalators, but not on new sites. So we're seeing that. And some of the other things that I want to talk about on this video are things that I've discussed in the past, like landlord fatigue. So what is cell tower landlord fatigue, you ask? Well, let me tell you what it is. So you're a property owner, you're a cell tower landlord with a tower on the ground or rooftop antennas. You're getting calls all the time. You're getting calls from companies like Black Dot, hiding as, pretending they're Verizon or whatever, or you're getting calls from MD7, again, like, it could be a Cenrev, CENREV, they're saying that they're part of Verizon's network, implementation group. They're really MD7 or Black Dot. And they're trying to reduce your rent, get you to take a rent holiday, rent guarantee. Always, anything that says lease optimization is optimizing the lease in the favor of the carrier, not you, right? You're never going to get a good deal out of a lease optimization proposal. And, what we've looked at, we're guessing, and this is not scientific, but approximately maybe 1 in 1,000 cell towers cell sites might be relocated as of right now in 2025. It is extremely rare for a cell site to be relocated, because you're not willing to give them a 20 or 30 or 40% rent reduction. It's just not going to happen. The cell tower relocations that I've seen, and cell site relocations that I've seen down here in the Florida Panhandle where I'm located, they've both been due to cell tower lease buyouts that occurred. One of them was on a rooftop. The other one was on a tower. One was an AT&T rooftop on a hotel. The other one was an American Tower monopole on the ground. And both of these leases had been sold. So lease buyouts happened. They cashed out. And then, because of eminent domain, in one instance, a hotel needed to be demolished to build an on-ramp for a bridge. And then the other one, an exit ramp off of Interstate 10 is being constructed. So the road is wide in there, and the tower had to come down. Both instances, they're relocating that cell site. But those are not because someone didn't give a 30% rent reduction. So it happens. Sometimes it happens, like you'll find cell sites being relocated in New York City or other big areas, heavily populated urban areas where there's construction happening, right? So they're taking the 6-story corner, railroad apartment building that was built 100 years ago, and they're putting in, 100-story condo, right? That happens all the time, or 50-story condo, and they have to move that cell site, right? The developer just, buys out Verizon over there, buys the building, and they force them out. So those are the types of places, those types of scenarios that you'll see most of these cell site relocations. Not because you're not willing to give them a 30% rent reduction. They want you to believe that, because they're paying such a high rent that this is gonna, the cell site's not gonna be as valuable to the network, which is complete BS. Okay, and I know that these the network engineers and radio frequency engineers, they cringe when they hear stories of these MD7, Black Dot, even Lyle Company rent reduction initiatives, because it really is utter nonsense. And I know that there's some guy named Greg at AT&T who's high up on the food chain. That's his job. Good for you. But there's got to be a better freaking way to make a living than going to landlords and shaking them down for rent. And you know what? I harp on this a lot because I see how heavy-handed the wireless industry is to property owners, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Here's the deal. I'm actually working with a landlord right now, somewhere on the East Coast, and these folks, they had a tower put up on their property, somewhere in the early 2010s, somewhere around there, or actually mid-2010s. And, it was back when AT&T was still building towers. So they put a tower on their property, and I guess American Tower or one of these companies took it over. Pretty sure it was American Tower. But anyway, tower company takes it over and just says, hey, we built this tower for AT&T, but, they haven't leased any antenna space here. Boo hoo hoo, So they're carrying the cost of that. So what happens? They hire, let's just call them MD7. They hire one of these companies like MD7. Maybe it wasn't them, maybe it was. So, but MD7 or one of their, similar type of companies comes in and really shakes down that landlord. Let's just call it MD7 because it was MD7. They shook the landlord down. They wanted a 50% rent reduction. Now, understand that MD7 is heavily incentivized to get these rent reductions, right? So they get this rent reduction. They ask for a 50% rent reduction on rent that was only like $600 a month, maybe $650. So, or basically like a $600 a month rent. They're crying poverty on. Okay, MD7 comes in, shakes down the landlord for. Well, they ended up getting a 33% rent reduction. So it went from 600 to 400, okay? I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And then, very soon after, all of a sudden, that tower has 2 tenants on it. It's got T-Mobile and AT&T. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. So these companies, that's their MO. Shake down, tell the landlord, oh, the site is not that important to the network, right? And and then you turn around and 2 years later you have 2 tenants on it. So I don't care. They could tell me till they're blue in the face. That whole business model, as far as I'm concerned, it's a borderline scam. But I know people make a living off of that, and whatever. But I have no love for MD7 or Black Dot, any of these companies that it's their business to reduce rents on churches, on farmers, on middle America, normal landlords, and they'll do it to they don't play as hardball with some of the big real estate developers and whatnot that have some common sense and know that these guys are just BSing 99.9% of the time. But I've got a deal right now with these clowns, and they're trying to shake down the landlord who's a church, and we're advising that landlord not to give up an inch, and so anyway, if you're a landlord fatigue. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but landlord fatigue, basically, you're getting bombarded with these rent reduction offers, right? You're getting bombarded with letters from MD7 and Black Dot to reduce the rent or face termination of the lease potentially. You're also getting lease buyout offers. You got Landmark Dividend and Terra Pact and who else? There's a bunch of other companies, AP Wireless, Unison. They're out there, telemarketing, sending you letters, sending you offers. And the offers are always different, but you're getting buyout offers left and right. So you're getting rent reduction proposals, you're getting lease buyout offers from all these lease buyout hedge funds, right? And also from the tower companies. Now the tower companies are coming back to you if it's not a rooftop, right? They're coming back to you and they're looking to extend that lease. Vertical Bridge wants to extend, American Tower wants to extend, SBA, Crown Castle, they all want to extend their lease agreements. Well, but they're also looking to buy you out, right? So you're getting all these different letters and proposals. So it's very easy to kind of, experience landlord fatigue. And then when you actually get a real proposal, right? Someone contacts you, and this is the danger, right? All of a sudden, you could get a proposal from Tillman Infrastructure or from one of these other companies that are these like rogue type of operators, you could call them. And look, Tillman even calls themselves a rogue company, right? They're here to shake up the industry. I get that. So what do these companies do? They'll knock on the door of the Crown Castle landlord and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I see you have this Crown Castle cell tower on your property. Well, we'd also like to put a tower on your property. Yeah, I know that you're getting $1,500, $1,600, $1,800, $2,000 a month, and you have T-Mobile and AT&T, as your tenants there, subtenants, but we want to build another property, another tower, just 500, 1,000 feet away on your same parcel, but we're just going to do it for like $800 a month, but we want to do a 99-year lease. Hey, it's extra money for you. What you don't realize if you're a property owner, their whole business model is to go now sign a cheap lease with you for a long time, and then reach out to AT&T, reach out to T-Mobile, and then contact Verizon or whomever, and try to get them to hop over, right? And so their whole goal is to poach those those tenants that you have, those subtenants, off the tower onto their site, right? That's all they're worried about. That's all they care about. And eventually you'll end up losing those. You could lose that Crown Castle tower, or the American Tower site, or the SBA site. So, and if you don't pay attention, you're getting bombarded with all these buyout offers and rent reduction proposals. And then the Tillman folks knock on your door, and you either start talking to them, you're not paying attention, and you sign a lease, or you say, hey, you know what? Don't waste my time. I'm done with you. I'm not interested. And then they end up going across the street to your neighbor that you don't get along with, who signs a deal for $500 a month just to screw you. And then all of a sudden you get a letter that 5 years from now they put a tower up across the street, and you notice that all of a sudden you have no tenants on your site, and they've migrated across the street to the Tillman site, and then you get a termination letter. So that's the danger of cell tower landlord fatigue. You really need to be on top of what you're doing in 2025 and pay attention to what's being proposed and what's being offered by the wireless industry. And it's kind of hard to, especially like if you have a rooftop, and it's just hard to keep track of what's going on up there. You have people coming in and out, all kinds of contractors, proposals and whatnot. You really need to be on top of your game. Also, 2025, lease buyouts. It's been, the end of 2024 prior to the election, we had a lot of the Trumpers worried and selling, right? Like, oh my God, Joe Biden's going to be president. We got to sell. And the funny part in 2025, now we got like a lot of the Biden folks. Oh my God, Trump, what is he doing? So they're selling. Like, hey, I could care less. I really could. So our goal here is to make sure that you're not getting screwed by the lease buyout industry. If you're selling, a cell tower lease, ground lease or rooftop easement, we want to make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of by the sharks. Again, the sharks who are circling. And we say, when they smell blood in the water, boy, they're not gonna tell you. And by that time it's over, right? You might have negotiated yourself out of a deal. You might have signed a letter of intent for way much less than the site was worth. You really want to make sure that your interests are protected when you're doing a lease buyout, selling an easement on a rooftop or a ground lease, and maximize the value of that lease buyout deal. So at Tower Genius, we know the industry, know the buyers of these things. We have a very strong Rolodex of contacts, and we can make sure that you don't have to learn how to do a lease buyout, right? Just tap into our expertise. And again, Kevin and I and David and Bob, we've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and I mean probably in the thousands of lease buyout offers. We've helped several hundred property owners with their lease buyout transactions over the past 17 years. So this is, definitely not our first rodeo. We know the industry, we know the players, we know the tricks of the trade, and always get a second opinion. Don't sign anything if you're doing a lease buyout unless you talk to Tower Genius. And I don't say that lightly. We've had several examples of clients over the past, even just 2, 3, 4 years, where they had a great offer, or looked like a good offer, and I know one of them, we ended up getting the property owner over $700,000 more than their best offer was. Just had another one recently, multiple six figures plus, and this happens pretty regularly. So we're not going to waste your time. If you need help with a lease buyout, talk to us, 888-313-9750, fill out a contact form. So on new towers, new sites, new leases, a lot of the the offers, just want to quickly go through lease rates and whatnot. Here, I got a little bit of time still. So I know it's a long video. We're 18 minutes into this, but so on new cell sites, on rural sites, these vertical bridges of the world and other companies that are out there developing cell towers, they're going to be proposing rents between $500 and $1,000. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room, obviously from $500, yeah, there's wiggle room. But again, if you have property owners that are hard up for money, like here in the Florida Panhandle, I see it all the time. Somebody contacts, Unity Towers, one of these companies contacts a property owner, and there's 20 other parcels they could put these things on. They'll find the one property, owner that, is maybe in a trailer or something, has 5 or 10 acres, and that'll do the deal for $500. And that's just the ugly truth of it. Where, if you push back really heavily, chances are that they're going to go to choose the path of least resistance. So, yeah, maybe you'll get $1,000 on a new tower. The problem is they're offering these long term. So, and the low escalators and the crazy right of first refusal language and consent language. So, we can certainly help you with those. We offer 2 different services on the front end. I'm not going to pitch our rates here, but They're very affordable. We can help make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of, and you know all the lease terms that you need to pay attention to, and make sure that you're getting a well-structured deal and a fair transaction. On rooftops, even the rooftop cell sites, there's still new rooftop cell sites being proposed. Carriers are building out rooftop cell sites. Typically, most rooftops are going to start off over $2,000, just because it's a direct carrier lease. And if I go back to my example with the developers, like Vertical Bridge, if Verizon is locating on a Vertical Bridge tower or whatever, that carrier is paying the tower company roughly about $2,000 to be on that route, on that tower. So they're not going to pay you $2,000 if they're only getting $2,000. So that's the math on that, right? They got to pay down the money that they borrowed, and they're not going to do a $1,500 Vertical Bridge lease for Verizon on a tower. It's just not going to happen. In the old days, you'd get $1,500 every day of the week, on a direct Verizon tower lease, but not when it's a developer lease. So you just got to look at the economics. If you're talking to a cell tower developer, a cell tower company, and they're offering you $2,000 a month, understand that they have at least 2 carriers lined up, right? So it has to do with how the deal gets structured. So, and that's why you want to talk to Tower Genius. So getting back to the rooftops, yeah, it's very common to see a $2,000 a month lease on a rooftop cell site with Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T, because there's no tower company. You are the tower company, right? If they're going on your smokestack or in your church steeple or on your roof or whatever, that you are the cell site company. Now, what you're competing with, just to understand, are these 5G small cell nodes that are being deployed in the public right-of-ways, like on top of wooden utility poles. The wireless industry has basically they have lobbied in Washington D.C. in 2018 or so to have it policy where Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, they only pay rent of $270 a year on a small cell if it's on a telephone pole or whatever in a public right-of-way. So they're paying the city or the county or whatever $270 a month. I know there was a huge uproar here in Pensacola a few years back when these things started popping up everywhere. But these cell sites are going up. They're going up by the hundreds, by the thousands, and if here's the risk if you're a rooftop cell site landlord and you have let's say you have a mature AT&T lease on your roof that pays $5,000 a month. Very common in an urban area to have a 25-30-year-old AT&T rooftop lease that's $4,000 or $5,000 a month in rent. The danger is if Verizon or AT&T says, hey, you know what, I could put up 10 small cells in the surrounding several blocks here, and I could power them up, and I'm only going to pay $2,700 for the entire year to put up 10 small cells. I'm only paying $270 for the whole year. So let's say they're paying $5,000 a month at an AT&T rooftop site. It's $60,000 a year versus $2,700 a year for 10 small cells. That's where Kevin and I have been saying now for a long time that these rooftop cell site leases are at risk in major urban areas. Eventually, we think that they're probably going to go away, maybe about 80% of them. Not yet. And that's why we're telling rooftop landlords, hey, look, if you're a rooftop cell site landlord with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, sell, baby, sell. Sell, sell, sell. We're telling you to sell that rooftop rental stream. Why? Because there are still companies buying this stuff. And, they're just not smart enough, God bless them, to figure out the math on a $270 a year small cell lease on a public right-of-way versus paying, $4,800 or $60,000 a year in rent. The mathematics on that, eventually there's going to be a critical mass when is reached, and they're either going to start to decommission these rooftop cell sites, and they're definitely going to stop paying what they're paying right now. That leads us to lease renewals. Okay, so let's go with these rooftop lease renewals. So basically the MO in the industry is, if you have a rooftop cell site lease, they're contacting you like 5 years out to get a rent reduction. And you'll get MD7 Black Dot calling you and annoying the hell out of you to get a rent reduction and saying, hey, guarantee your rent for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Here's the deal. So even if you give them a rent reduction, there is absolutely nothing that will stop them from taking that cell tower down, that cell site down, if there's such a huge technology change, right? If there's a major technology advance, all these sites are coming down, right? If Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or one of these folks figures out a way to implement some technology that is like game-changing, disruptive wireless technology, however it comes, at some point, maybe someone's going to invent something that eliminates cell sites and cell towers. Right? It hasn't been satellites yet. It's not Starlink. But let's just say that happens. Well, there's no rent reduction that you can give to save your site. It's going away. So what I tell property owners is, if you've got a cell site, okay, and you've got a rooftop lease, don't give them a rent reduction. Take as much money as you can for as long as you can, and collect the rent until they're blue in the face. Don't give them a rent reduction. Period. End of story. No rent reductions. Don't do it. We believe that because of all these 5G small cells going in the public right-of-ways for very low rents, that eventually, and maybe in the very near future, these lease buyout companies aren't going to be paying as much for them as they would now, right? Where if you have currently, let's say you have anyway, so let's go to the renewals. So I almost got off on a tangent here. Look at that beautiful cell tower. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, so let's say that you're getting these calls. They want you to reduce the rent, and you hold out. You definitely want to get this lease renewed, within like a year or two of expiration. You'll find that the Black Dots of the world, the MD7s of the world, and the Lyle companies of the world will start getting more serious about an actual lease amendment and lease renewal when you're about a year out. Until then, they're just trying to reduce the rent, lease optimization, holiday, blah, blah, blah. Just say no. Nancy Reagan once said, just say no to cell tower rent reductions. All right, she didn't actually say that. I did. But don't give them a rent reduction. And so if you can, in arbitrage it, if you can get a bump on obviously you want to talk to us if you're looking to renew that lease to make sure it can be fixed properly. Make sure that when you renew that rooftop lease, that they don't try to slip in some sneaky language like T-Mobile does with maybe they say, okay, there's no right of first refusal, but they slip in confidentiality language or consent language, like a severance transaction paragraph, where they basically will make you pay for to if you wanted to sell this. So if you can get a rent increase prior to selling the cell site lease, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. The lease buyout companies that look to purchase these cash flows, they're all looking for upside. So if you have a lease that expires in 2 or 3 years on a rooftop, or even on a cell tower on a ground lease, if a lease buyout company sees the opportunity for upside where they can renegotiate on your behalf, that is more attractive, right? So anyway, we can certainly help you with the lease renewals. You want to make sure that if you have a multiple carrier site, that you're not getting a lower price than you should. It's important to make sure that American Tower and these companies will tell you till you're blue in the face, oh, it's not really worth that much. We don't pay that much. Oh, we never do this. Blah, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, I'd have a stack of dollars that's about 2 feet tall. Anyhow, getting off of the lease renewals, obviously there's a bunch of language that needs to be in your lease renewal if it's missing. That's why people hire Tower Genius to make sure that those leases that are deficient and defective get fixed to protect your best interest. Now with the lease buyouts, okay, cell tower lease buyouts, they're still an extremely hot commodity in 2025. You don't want to leave money on the table, and there are companies out there that will make you an offer. It sounds great, but you're still leaving money on the table, and you would have no idea. You can't really pull comps on this. It's just a matter of leveraging the knowledge of companies like Tower Genius. Kevin and I have been involved with hundreds of these transactions. So if you've got questions about maximizing your cell tower lease buyout, we want to hear from you. All right. So hopefully it didn't go too long. I'm talking about a half an hour now. But, if you want to maximize your cell tower lease agreement and make sure you're not getting taken advantage of in 2025, give Tower Genius a call. Our number is 888-313-9750. Visit us at towergenius.com, and thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day.